Welcome to another episode, everyone. Nikko Jenkins, one of the world's worst serial. This man is deranged. They let him out of prison after 10 years after committing a certain crime. We're about to get into it. And then he went on a straight killing spree. In fact, his sisters were involved in this. It was a family affair. Let's get into it, man.
In the summer of 2013, the city of Omaha, Nebraska, was shaken by a series of brutal murders that left 4 people dead in just 10 days. At the center of this bloodbath was Nikko Jenkins, a man whose life was marked by violence from the start. His release from prison would prove to be a fatal mistake, unleashing a wave of terror that gripped the community. The story of Nikko Jenkins is not just one of a cold-blooded killer, but also a cautionary tale about systemic failures in addressing criminal behavior and mental health. Over the next 30 segments, we will delve into the life, crimes, and legacy of one of America's most notorious serial killers. Prepare yourself for a journey into darkness as we uncover the twisted mind of Nikko Jenkins. Nikko Jenkins was born on September 16, 1986, in a household marred by crime and violence. His father, David Magee, was a habitual offender known for his explosive temper and violent tendencies. His mother, Lori Jenkins, followed a similar path with a long list of criminal offenses. Nikko was the only son among 6 children, all of whom grew up surrounded by drugs, illegal firearms.
These are his sisters. I remember I did a story on him some time back. His sisters were actually involved in some of these crimes. These women. Crazy.
And gang affiliations. At the age of 7, Nikko exhibited alarming behavior when he brought a loaded gun to school and threatened his classmates. Expelled and deemed a danger, he spiraled further into delinquency. By the time he was 12, he was sent to juvenile detention for charges ranging from theft to assault. These early encounters with the law marked the beginning of a life defined by crime. By the time Nikko turned 15, he was well acquainted with the justice system. His criminal record expanded to include armed robbery, carjacking, and assault. These crimes culminated in his arrest in 2003, when he was just 17 years old. He was caught carjacking a vehicle at gunpoint, leading to a conviction that carried an 18-year prison sentence. Prison became Nikko's home for over a decade. Far from reforming him, his time behind bars honed his violent tendencies. He participated in riots, attacked guards, and even attempted an escape during his grandmother's funeral. Psychologists diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder and severe paranoia, yet his condition was largely ignored. The prison system saw him as a liability too costly to treat. In July 2013, after serving just 10.5 years of his sentence, Nikko Jenkins was released early for good behavior. To the untrained eye, Jenkins seemed reformed, calm, polite, and cooperative.
Yes, and I recall this. So they let him go after 10.5 years or so, but I mean, it's not like they can hold him forever. He was sentenced to 18 years, and he did 10.5 of that. That's about right. That's about normal. And so they let him go, but they did not help him. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and all this other stuff. They didn't, and they let him go. They said it's too much to deal with. We kicking them. They released them back into society. Not necessarily blame the system. We're all responsible for our own actions, but they did release him back into society, knowing that he had some mental problems.
The parole board believed he had turned his life around. However, beneath the surface, Jenkins harbored resentment and a twisted purpose. Within weeks of his release, Jenkins began assembling his crew, recruiting family members like his mother Lori, sister Erica, and cousin Christine Bordeaux. Together, they would orchestrate a series of murders that left Omaha reeling in fear. In the early hours of August 11, 2013, Nikko Jenkins and his crew carried out their first murders. The victims, Juan Uribe Pena and Jorge Cajiga Ruiz, were lured to Spring Lake Park in Omaha by Jenkins' sister, Erica, and cousin, Christine Bordeaux. Pretending to offer companionship, the women convinced the men to park their white Ford F-150 truck in a secluded area. As the men waited, Jenkins approached the truck, dressed in black and wielding a 12-gauge shotgun. Without warning, he fired into the cab, killing both men instantly with headshots. The motive was chillingly simple: robbery. Jenkins rummaged through their pockets, stealing what little cash they had. He left the bodies slumped in the vehicle and calmly walked away. The gruesome scene.
Yeah, this is crazy, man. I mean, this day and age, even back then, people are not walking around with wads of cash. Everyone has, uses cards, bank cards, credit cards, whatever. So these street robberies are senseless. They're counterproductive. You're robbing someone for $50, $100 that they may have in their pocket. The bulk of their resources is not in their pocket. So to hit them in the head, take their life, and then end up with a few dollars, I mean, it's not worth it. You taking someone's life for a few dollars. No.
Was discovered hours later by a patrolling officer. The randomness of the crime and the brutality of the execution shocked investigators. But with no solid leads, the case quickly stalled. News of the double homicide spread quickly through Omaha. The brutality of the killings left the community shaken. Residents began locking their doors earlier, avoiding unfamiliar areas, and living in fear of a shadowy killer who could strike again at any moment. Police, under immense pressure, scrambled for leads but were met with frustration. Evidence from the crime scene was limited to shell casings and faint fingerprints, offering no immediate breakthroughs. Forensic experts suspected a shotgun was the murder weapon, but without witnesses or suspects, the investigation stalled. 8 days after the first murders, Jenkins struck again. This time, the victim was Curtis Bradford, a 22-year-old man Jenkins knew from his time in prison. Bradford had recently reconnected with Jenkins and had no reason to suspect danger when Jenkins invited him to meet for a supposed robbery plan. Under the pretense of recruiting him, Jenkins led Bradford to a secluded area. There, Jenkins turned on his former friend, shooting him in the back of the head. Jenkins later claimed the killing was necessary, though the motive remains unclear. Bradford's body was found the next morning. His murder bore similarities to the previous case: close-range execution with a shotgun. But the connection between the victims remained elusive. With 3 bodies in less than 2 weeks.
Damn. Close range, back of the head, with a shot, Geezy. Jeez, man. This dude, I remember this. This was his boy at some point there in prison when he did the 10.5 years, came home. Obviously, something happened. I forget what happened, but something happened. Apparently, they're in prison between the two, or when old boy came home, for him to turn on him and hit him in the back of the head like that and take him out, and they were once boys. I mean, this dude is unhinged, deranged.
Weeks, police began to suspect a pattern. The use of a shotgun, the execution-style killings, and the lack of motive all pointed to a single perpetrator. Investigators intensified their efforts, interviewing local residents and scouring crime scene evidence. Bradford's murder provided the first real lead. Detectives learned of his association with Jenkins and began piecing together Jenkins' movements after his release. It was only a matter of time before Jenkins became their prime suspect. In the early hours of August 21, 2013, Andrea Kruger was finishing her shift as a bartender and preparing to return home. A loving mother of 3, Kruger was described as someone who brought joy to everyone she met. As she drove her SUV through a quiet Omaha neighborhood, she was unaware that Jenkins and his crew had chosen her as their next target. Jenkins, along with his sister Erica and cousin Christine, ambushed Kruger as she stopped at a traffic light. Forcing her out of the vehicle at gunpoint, Jenkins shot her multiple times, once in the head and twice more in the neck and back. Her body was dumped on the roadside, and the crew drove away in her SUV. Later, they abandoned the vehicle after stealing personal belongings, leaving behind a trail of blood and bullet casings. Surveillance footage captured Kruger's SUV leaving the scene, providing a critical clue for investigators. Her murder, brutal and senseless, marked the climax of Jenkins' killing spree. Andrea Kruger's murder galvanized the Omaha police force. Detectives now had a consistent pattern: victims shot execution style with a shotgun, personal items stolen, and vehicles often used temporarily before being abandoned. Through surveillance footage, investigators tracked the SUV to a residential neighborhood where it was left behind. Inside the vehicle, they found bloodstains, shell casings, and a partial fingerprint on the door handle. This fingerprint proved to be a match for Nikko Jenkins. Investigators also connected Jenkins to Curtis Bradford, thanks to witness testimonies placing them together shortly before Bradford's murder. Slowly but surely, the puzzle pieces began to form a picture, with Jenkins at the center of it. On August 30th, 2013, Omaha police executed a coordinated operation to arrest Nikko Jenkins. Knowing his violent tendencies, officers surrounded his residence and apprehended him without incident. Alongside Jenkins, several family members, including his sister Erica and cousin Christine, were also taken into custody. During the search, investigators found critical evidence, including a shotgun matching the ballistics of the murders and stolen items from the victims. Confronted with this evidence, Jenkins remained unfazed, declaring his innocence and claiming he had been commanded by the Egyptian god Apophis to commit the murders. During his interrogation, Jenkins provided a detailed, emotionless confession of the murders. He described each killing with chilling precision, explaining his belief that the murders were necessary offerings to Apophis, a deity he claimed to worship. He revealed how he carefully planned each attack, selecting vulnerable victims and orchestrating ambushes.
It's bad because, these are innocent people. That's what's just so bad about it. All of them. Woman driving home from work on the highway like we all do every day, leaving work, trying to make it home, man, to your kids, to your family, what have you. Encounter some mad, deranged, animalistic type people. Just pull you out the car and without question, without warning, without giving you a chance to fight, plead for your life, take you out, just unload on you. Damn, just for the car that you are about to abandon in a little bit, that's all my life means. Ridiculous.
With the help of his family, the confession painted a horrifying picture of a man who felt no remorse and saw his actions as part of a divine mission. As the investigation progressed, it became increasingly clear that Nikko Jenkins did not act alone. His family was deeply involved in the murders, each member playing a role in the killings or helping to cover up the crimes. His mother, Lori Jenkins, had bought the ammunition used in the murders, while his sister, Erica Jenkins, helped lure the victims to their deaths. Christine Bordeaux, Jenkins' cousin, played a critical role in setting up the victims, acting as bait. She would often lure men with promises of companionship, leading them into situations where they were ambushed by Jenkins. The family's involvement made the case even more disturbing, as it became apparent that this was not just the work of a lone killer, but a coordinated family effort driven by violence and criminal behavior. During his interrogation, Jenkins provided a shocking confession, describing the murders with a calm detachment that chilled.
Whole family involved, sister, cousin, mother, they're all women. All the rest of them were women. Whole family involved in these brutal murders, taking people's lives. Your crime is your mama. His crime is his mother and his sister. They out here dumping on shit. This is crazy.
Told his interrogators. He detailed how he and his family carefully selected their victims, targeting vulnerable individuals with no connection to them. The murders, he claimed, were sacrifices to Apophis, the Egyptian god of chaos, whom he believed would protect him from harm. Jenkins' confession revealed the cold, calculated nature of his actions. He explained how he would often approach his victims, sometimes with the help of his family, to lure them into secluded locations. Once there, he would ambush them, shooting them point blank in the head. There was no remorse, no emotion in his words. He saw the murders as a necessary part of his divine mission. When Jenkins was arrested on August 30th, 2013, the news quickly spread across Omaha and beyond. The public was shocked that such a brutal killer was operating within their own community, and many were left questioning how someone with such a violent past had been allowed to re-enter society. The arrest was covered extensively by the media, with reports detailing Jenkins's history of violence and the chilling nature of the murders. News outlets described Jenkins as a monster, but some experts argued that his actions were the result of mental illness, pointing to his claims of hearing voices and his belief in a divine mission. However, the overwhelming consensus was that Jenkins was a cold, calculated killer who had preyed on vulnerable individuals with no remorse. As Jenkins prepared for his trial, his family faced legal battles of their own. Lori Jenkins, his mother, was charged with assisting in the murders by purchasing the weapons and ammunition used in the killings. Erica Jenkins, his sister, was charged with murder for her role in luring the victims. Christine Bordeaux, his cousin, was also charged with conspiracy to commit murder. The family's defense team tried to argue that Nikko's mental illness played a role in his actions, hoping for a lesser sentence. However, the prosecution emphasized Jenkins' meticulous planning and cold-blooded execution of the murders, making the case for the death penalty stronger. In 2014, Nikko Jenkins' trial finally began. The courtroom was packed with spectators, media, and family members of the victims, all eager to see justice served. Jenkins entered the courtroom wearing a disheveled expression, his eyes cold and emotionless. His defense team argued that his mental illness, particularly his schizophrenia and other personality disorders, had played a significant role in the murders. They pointed to his past history of mental health issues and claimed that he had been severely disturbed at the time of the killings. However, the prosecution argued that Jenkins was fully aware of his actions. They highlighted his meticulous planning, the way he lured his victims into isolated locations, and how he executed them with precision. The prosecution painted a clear picture of a cold, calculating killer who saw his victims as nothing more than pawns in a twisted religious ritual. Jenkins' behavior during the trial—
Disturbed is right. He's for sure disturbed. We can see that.
—only served to reinforce this image. He would often laugh or smile at inappropriate moments, making crude comments to his defense lawyers, and appearing detached from the severity of his actions. Throughout the trial, the prosecution presented harrowing testimonies from the victims' families. Each person described the pain and heartbreak of losing their loved ones in such a brutal and senseless manner. The grief was palpable in the courtroom as family members of the victims recounted the impact of Jenkins' actions on their lives. The graphic details of the murders were also presented as forensic experts described the brutal execution-style killings in chilling detail. The sight of the autopsy photos and the evidence of the execution-style gunshot wounds left the courtroom in silence. The testimony of one of the surviving victims, who narrowly escaped death after being shot by Jenkins, provided a chilling account of how Jenkins hunted down his victims. During his trial, Jenkins' defense team tried to argue that he was not guilty by reason of insanity. They claimed that Jenkins was suffering from a severe mental illness at the time of the murders, and that his actions were a direct result of his psychosis. They cited his past history of mental health problems, including his diagnosis of schizophrenia and his bizarre behavior both before and during the trial, as evidence of his diminished capacity. However, the prosecution argued that Jenkins' actions showed a clear understanding of right and wrong, and that his mental illness did not absolve him of responsibility. They presented evidence that Jenkins had carefully planned each murder and had executed them with precision. His lack of remorse and his calm demeanor throughout the trial only solidified the prosecution's argument that Jenkins was fully aware of his actions. After weeks of testimony, deliberation, and emotional testimony from the victims' families, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict. Nikko Jenkins was found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder, and the jury recommended the death penalty. The judge, after considering Jenkins' mental health history and the severity of his crimes, sentenced him to death. Jenkins' reaction to the verdict was chilling. He showed no emotion, staring blankly at the judge as the sentence was read. He later claimed that the court had no right to sentence him to death because he was under the influence of Apophis. But his claims fell on deaf ears. Jenkins would be sent to Nebraska State Penitentiary, where he would await execution. Throughout the
Apophis is not going to help you now. Apophis is nowhere around to help you, bro.
trial, Jenkins' behavior was deeply unsettling. His lack of emotion and his disturbing outbursts raised serious questions about his mental state. During several sessions, he would laugh or smile at inappropriate times, seemingly unaffected by the gravity of the situation. He often mocked the proceedings, making crude comments and interrupting the defense team. At one point, Jenkins even spoke out during his own defense, claiming that he had been chosen by Apophis to carry out the murders.
Why would he care?
Jenkins' emotional detachment and
He's about to be sentenced to death. He doesn't care. He's taken many lives. He's not there. He doesn't. Yeah, he's in court laughing and all that. He doesn't care.
Appropriate behavior during the trial only solidified the prosecution's argument that he was a cold, calculating individual, not driven by mental illness, but by his own twisted sense of purpose. His trial became a spectacle, where his bizarre conduct further illustrated just how detached he was from the humanity of his victims. As the details of the murders emerged, it became clear that Nikko Jenkins was not simply acting on impulse, but with meticulous planning. Jenkins and his family carefully selected their victims, often choosing people with no connections to them, random strangers. His method of execution was cold and precise, luring victims to isolated locations, ambushing them, and shooting them in the head at point-blank range with a shotgun. Witnesses testified that Jenkins planned these attacks with military precision. He would scout out areas beforehand, make sure there were no witnesses, and then carry out the killings. The victims had no chance of survival. Jenkins' ability to remain calm during the murders and afterward was chilling. He never showed any remorse or hesitation. To him, these killings were part of a divine mission dictated by Apophis. Throughout the investigation and trial, Jenkins repeatedly claimed that his actions were guided by Apophis, the ancient Egyptian god of chaos and destruction. According to Jenkins, he believed he was the chosen one, tasked with purging the world through violent acts. He saw himself as an instrument of divine justice, and the murders were part of a larger cosmic plan. Jenkins' obsession with Apophis and his distorted sense of divine mission raised questions about his mental stability. Was he truly mentally ill, or was he using his delusions as a defense to avoid the death penalty? Despite his claims, many experts argued that Jenkins' actions showed a clear understanding of right and wrong, pointing out that he planned and executed the murders in cold blood. One of the most disturbing aspects of the case was the involvement of Jenkins' family. His mother, Lori Jenkins, was charged with providing him with the weapons and ammunition used in the killings. His sister, Erica Jenkins, played an active role in luring victims, while his cousin, Christine Bordeaux, helped set up the murders. While some in the community saw them as victims of Jenkins' manipulation, others believed they were just as culpable. They were not mere bystanders. They actively participated in the murders. Lori Jenkins, in particular, was unapologetic, insisting that her son was innocent and that he was manipulated by external forces. The family's involvement in the murders painted a
victims of his manipulation. That's what he just said. People are saying that his mother, sister, cousin, they're all victims of his manipulation. No.
chilling picture of a cycle of violence perpetuated by years of criminal activity and neglect. As the murders continued, the fear in Omaha grew. The community had once been a peaceful place, but now it was gripped by the fear that anyone could be next. People began to stay inside after dark, avoiding certain areas and taking extra precautions when going out. Police increased patrols, but they were still struggling to find the killer. The randomness of the attacks and the fact that the victims had no apparent connection to Jenkins made the case even more terrifying. The authorities were faced with a killer who could strike at any time, anywhere, and with no apparent pattern to his crimes. The city's atmosphere was thick with tension as residents wondered who the killer would target next. Jenkins' actions were not random. He followed a chilling pattern with every murder. He meticulously selected his victims, often strangers with no apparent ties to him. His method of killing was consistent: lure them into isolated locations, ambush them, and execute them at point-blank range with a shotgun. The planning involved was disturbing. Each step was calculated with cold precision. Jenkins, despite his claims of being influenced by a deity, demonstrated a clear understanding of the violence he was committing. His ability to remain calm during the attacks and afterwards showed that he was not acting out of a moment of rage or insanity, but with methodical intent. Every move he made suggested a plan, a carefully orchestrated mission to fulfill his belief in a divine calling.
Yes.
The investigation revealed a man who had turned murder into a routine, methodical task. Psychologists and forensic experts who studied Jenkins concluded that his behavior stemmed from a deep-seated mental illness. Yet there was a disturbing aspect to his actions: the calculated nature of his crimes. While he clearly exhibited signs of paranoid schizophrenia and antisocial personality disorder, He also demonstrated a frightening level of manipulation and awareness. Jenkins was not merely a product of his circumstances. He was a person capable of rationalizing his violent actions. He justified the murders as sacrifices to Apophis, claiming they were necessary for his own protection. His manipulation of his family, particularly his mother and sister, showed a cold and calculating.
Did he manipulate his family? Did he manipulate his mother and sister? Or did they just get involved? I mean, he may influence them, ask them, talk to them, but people who don't want to get involved in this sort of stuff, they're not going to get involved.
Individual who used his mental illness as a tool to carry out his horrific desires. Despite his claims of insanity, Jenkins was determined to manipulate the legal system to delay his execution. He continued to argue that his mental health issues were severe enough to render him unfit for the death penalty. However, after several evaluations, the courts ruled that Jenkins was competent to stand trial and face execution. His lawyers filed appeal after appeal, but each was rejected. In the years following his conviction, Jenkins made repeated attempts to injure himself in prison, engaging in self-mutilation, and even attempting to cut off his genitals. These acts of self-harm were seen as a way to draw attention to his supposed mental instability and perhaps to delay his.
Yeah, I remember that too. He started cutting on himself there in prison, and he tried to cut off his thing. He tried. Maybe he really is. I mean, that's not normal. You're trying to keep your thing. If you don't do nothing else in life, you're trying to keep your Johnson. You're trying to hold on to that. If you can't do nothing else, the moment you start trying to get rid of that thing, you done lost your damn mind.
Execution. He also made bizarre public statements, claiming that his actions were part of a divine mission and demanding that the government take responsibility for his actions. Despite these efforts to manipulate the system, Jenkins remained on death row. His execution date continued to be postponed, but eventually, after years of legal wrangling, it became clear that Jenkins's actions, though influenced by his mental illness, had led him to commit horrific crimes that would ultimately result in his death sentence. Jenkins, in the end, was held accountable for his actions. The case remains one of the most chilling examples of a serial killer whose family played a disturbing role in enabling his violent acts.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Black people, what? Flip right on there and see black people. What's this all about? The helly? All right, man. There you go. Nikko Jenkins, man. Whoa. Wow. Sister, mother, cousin, they're all involved, setting it up, mother buying bullets. Damn. A family affair. And I don't know, man. Clearly he's not all there. Evidenced by the fact really that he tried to cut off his own thing there in prison. You don't fake this kind of, that's crazy. Now that's what makes me think he's more crazy than anything else he done did. Was that act right there. That's why I know he lost it. So on the one hand, he is crazy. Apparently. Not all there. But on the other hand, as this dude alluded to, perhaps this was AI, I guess the same dude, this voice. But, it's still, the story is what it is. He set up these unalivings. He set them up. They were all premeditated. Brought them to a certain place. These people were involved to set them up and bring them there. I mean, it was a whole get at. Lending itself to the belief that he's not perhaps crazy. He's cognizant of exactly what he's doing. So I'm conflicted. Is the dude crazy or not? I'm gonna have to say, yeah, though, it's based on that thing. Like, I'm serious. Try to cut off his thing. Yeah, that makes, yeah. He lost it. He lost it. If he wasn't crazy before that, he was crazy then when he tried to do that. Rest in peace to those people, man. Sad situation. He got the death penalty, as we just saw, as we heard, but he's still They haven't put him to death. Sure, he's going through the appellate process or what have you. This stuff didn't happen that long ago. Normally, it's a process there on death row. But man, it's just the sad thing. The sad part is just these innocent people just driving down the street, going home or whatever. That can be you. That can be I. That can be any of us just driving down the street. That's the part that always gets me. That's the part where I don't get down with these type of people. When you start taking innocent people. If you want to come after a gang member that came after you, y'all gang banging, y'all in the street, y'all made that decision to go on the street and live this kind of life, that's on you. But innocent people, innocent woman who doesn't want to live that life, she didn't ask for that life. She doesn't want that life. She's not a part of that life. She's not tough. She's not in the street. She's not trying to be tough. She's going from work to home. Then you take her out. And that's what I got a freaking problem with, bro. That's what I have a real problem with, that sort of stuff right there. But all right, man, let me know what y'all think in the comments, man. Old Nikko. Damn. Stay safe and stay free, people.